Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Human Perspective. I'm very excited about the program we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be talking about parenting with three people who have different experiences. The intent of this is really to help continue to spur discussion about parenting for parents who have disabilities and may also have kids with disabilities. So what I'd like each one of you to do is to briefly describe yourself after I describe what I look like. So I am a 73-year-old white disabled woman, and I have brown hair that I highlighted a couple of weeks ago for the Oscars, first time in my life. And I'm wearing lipstick, and I have a blouse which is multicolored and different designs with squares and circles, blue, maroon, and gold. We're in our foyer and surrounded by photos and sketches of family and postcards. And in the background is our dining room office with lots of plants. So Jessica, would you like to go next?
Sure. I am a 38-year-old white woman with long brown hair, and I'm wearing a black V-neck cardigan with 3 gold chains, and I have black rimmed glasses, and I'm leaning against a green floral pillow with 2 other throw pillows next to me.
Hi everyone, I'm Sachin Pavithran. I'm a 43-year-old male, dark-skinned. I'm blind myself. I'm from a Southeast Asian descent, wearing a button-up shirt that's light blue with a blurred background.
Judy.
Hi, I'm a 75-year-old white woman with no makeup. I never liked makeup. I have hair that's finally graying and shows, and I have a blue rim eyeglasses I like, and I got a new haircut. It's one of my favorite for the first time post-pandemic, and I'm wearing a blue shirt, and I have cerebral palsy and pre-aging. I walked with a limp, and my left side was affected. Post-aging and post-breast cancer, I have overuse, and I use a wheelchair when going out of the house.
Great. So thank you all for coming to the show. Maybe we could start off with a little bit of information from each of you about what your first experiences were when you decided you wanted to be a parent. Jessica, you want to start?
Sure. You know, I really stumbled into being a parent. I have a disability. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS, and mine manifests in a way that when I'm not in the house, I use a wheelchair, and I'm mostly bedbound and sofa bound. And I was living in California and dating my husband, and we bought a house. And I heard about foster parenting, and I can't remember how I did, but it just struck me that if we had extra room and there were kids who needed places to stay, that we should open up our house, which I now see as kind of simplistic way of thinking of foster parenting. But we got our foster license and were licensed to be a temporary home for ages 0 through 12 years old. And the licensing process was pretty difficult for me. I had to sit in 24 hours of course in person, and the rooms were too hot, and I don't thermoregulate well, and I'm unable to engage mentally for that, for 4 to 6 hours at a time, which I needed to do. So it took me a long time to complete the courses. And then I also had to get doctor's approval to be a parent, which I really worried about. But that ended up being okay once I could show that we had the financial capacity to get help. But there were some obstacles in being licensed. And then the second child that stayed with us was our son, who we ended up adopting. And he came to stay when he was 8 days old.
So Judy, maybe you could speak a little bit about yourself. You're the oldest of this group. And so I only raised that because you had your first child what year?
I had Anya in 1976, and I got to miss the 504 demonstration because she was 6 months old and my job was to take care of her. Didn't see how I could do it in a building. I used to go into CIL, it was very empty. So I always wanted to have a baby, and I always thought of myself, I knew I was disabled, but I also pretended I wasn't because I had a limp and I thought I could pass, but Judy told me I didn't. Um, so um, I was I'm married to a doctor, so I had no prejudice at the hospital whatsoever. I don't know if they would have seen or done, though my labor was quite intense, and Peter had to hold my leg up to his chest to stop it spasming around so we could deliver a baby and not a leg.
But maybe you could give a little brief explanation about what Through the Looking Glass is.
Through the Looking Glass has had several federal grants, and it's was the National Center for Parenting with a Disability. We have had money which gave us the luxury of creating baby care equipment for all disabilities.
Sachin, so tell us about your journey into parenting.
So, when before I became a dad, the whole idea of becoming a dad was nerve-wracking because of my blindness. I wasn't sure whether I could be a good dad, but I was fortunate to be surrounded by other blind role models who are parents who kind of gave me some, I guess, pointers on what blind parenting could look like, what things you need to keep in mind. When I had my first, when my first daughter was born, I was all prepared for what to expect, and because of my eye condition, I knew there was a pretty high probability that my kids could also have a similar eye disorder I have, which is retinitis pigmentosa, and I was all prepared for that. But when she was born, what we found out that she kept failing her hearing test. And the first time it happened, they do the test right when they were born, and they said, well, that's normal. It sometimes it happens, and they just test back again 2 days later. But she kept failing the test. Now I was all ready for what to do if my kid was blind. I was not at all prepared. What if my kid had some other disability, especially a hearing loss?
I'm wondering with all of you, are there experiences, either positively or negatively, that you've had around your being out and about, or in your home where someone else has been there, where there's been an aha moment on their part, seeing things that they thought people couldn't do, or where people made comments to you that you felt were out of line?
So I'll jump in. So I like to go to the park with my kids. When we have certain rules that we have set that works with us. So when they go from one equipment to the next, they're supposed to let me know. And then I told you about the squeaky shoes. When they're little kids. Now that they're older, there's more verbal communication going on. But I've had instances when parents or others who are in that kind of setting notice that I'm there with these kids, and some are just being nice, and they come up to you and say, hey, your kid is over there. You're like, well, I know where my kid is. So there's assumptions that people made. Then there's situations where parents have approached not approached me, but approached others, is basically questioning if I'm able to be responsible, or also sometimes making comments like that. It's good that your kids can help you out, when you're walking, or when I'm walking around with them. It's this assumption that it's either I might not be responsible, or it is an assumption I'm better off because my kids can see, so they can help me out.
Living in Berkeley, I really didn't hit any problem, but where it was is, and Sachin would have it, I think, Jessica, your son is too young, is my kids were getting teased. Ah, your mother is disabled. Oh, and I would have to get them to say, so what? And I said to them, tell them I get good parking. And my kids would say they don't care. And I try to say, they will.
The first thing I thought of was so before I was Khalil's parent, I used a manual wheelchair or a mobility scooter. And then when he was a little older, I wasn't able to go with him to the playground because I couldn't like stay on the manual wheelchair for long enough to be comfortable for me. And I just started missing out on things. And so I ended up getting a power wheelchair, a power reclining wheelchair. And my neurologist was really resistant to that. He said, well, if you get this, maybe you'll decondition more. And that I needed it for parenting wasn't adequate for him. And then later I was at the airport in that wheelchair. And someone who worked at the airport told me they weren't allowed to let kids ride on their parents on the wheelchair. We were told that David had to carry Khalil and that I couldn't carry him. And it was a blip, but those blips end up mattering. And it's not inferior to carry a child on a wheelchair versus walking. But I would say the thing that happens the most is that because our family is transracial and Khalil's Black and I'm white, when Khalil and I are out and it's just us, people just offer kind of unnecessary encouragement. We get a lot of like, good for you too, or you're doing a great job, or like, and we're just doing very normal things. And I know that like can feel a little off-putting too, to be told good job for like taking a walk together. And it makes me feel like our life story is like people are making assumptions about our entire life story. And that I'm not always prepared to take all of those on just by being out of the house.
Yeah, my husband and I will go down the street and frequently he'll hold on to my wheelchair. And because I've used a motorized wheelchair. And people say, are you racing? All kinds of things, and I've just learned not to challenge people. I just smile and whatever, you want to take them aside and have a discussion with them, but that's not why I'm outside. So not to educate. Or for me and my husband, we don't have any kids. We didn't get married till I was 44. And, but we're very close with like nieces and nephews. And we have a family that we're very close to where the little boy is now 6 and we do a lot of things with them. So, but also the same kinds of concerns, couldn't do this, I can't do that, I can't lift him. Luckily even using that word, luckily, it's, I can't pick him up. But it's very funny how he's adjusted. When Jorge got a new manual wheelchair, we kept the old one in the living room, like for the first day. And when Theodore came in, he sat in the wheelchair and it is now his wheelchair. He comes in, he sits in it right away. He rolls around the apartment. He'll take it outside. So I think, kids really adapt. And even though he's not our son, it's very cute to see how sometimes I would say, I don't know, protective is the right word, but can predict things that we may need and can be out there first. Well, I want to thank you all. I think this was great. You've all got great lives, great stories, and your kids are clearly benefiting from having wonderful parents. So thank you all very much. And audience, I hope you enjoyed this program, and we'll see you again soon.
That history won't forget us or try to minimize our pain. And so I